So you've been playing around with generative AI, right? Maybe you've built a pretty cool demo or a fun little chatbot. But let's get real for a second. How do you go from that initial spark, that cool idea, and actually forge it into a professional-grade, solid application that can handle the real world? Well, that's exactly what we're going to break down. This is the million-dollar question, isn't it? We're going to move past the playground phase and get right into what it takes to build for production. We're talking about the entire end-to-end process for building a generative AI system that you can actually deploy with total confidence. And this right here, this is our roadmap for the journey, the generative AI system lifecycle. Take a look. You can see it's really broken into two main phases. That top row, that's all about the initial development. Everything from figuring out the business problem to collecting the data and building the AI itself. Then the bottom row, that's what happens after you go live. We're talking deployment and that all-important continuous monitoring loop that keeps the whole system healthy. We're going to walk through this entire thing step by step. So, our first stop is the design phase. I want you to think of yourself as an architect here. Before anyone lays a single brick, you need a detailed blueprint. And for an AI application, that blueprint, well, it all starts with the art of asking the right question. This is where prompt engineering comes in, and it's so much more than just asking a question. It's really about crafting super precise instructions that guide the AI to give you exactly what you need. And I can't stress this enough. The quality of your output is almost entirely dependent on the quality of your prompt. Just look at the difference a couple of examples can make. On one hand, you have a zero-shot prompt. You're basically asking the model to perform a task cold, with no hits. But with few-shot prompting, you give it a little nudge, an example or two to show it what you mean. This simple little technique can just dramatically boost the accuracy of its answers. It's a game changer. So what about really complex problems? Well, you don't ask the AI to do everything at once. No way. You break it down. This technique is called prompt chaining. See how it works? The output from one simple task becomes the input for the next one. You're creating this powerful, multi-step process that lets the AI think its way through a much harder problem. Okay, let's move on to the absolute foundation of our application, the data. You have to remember, every single great AI system is built on a solid bedrock of high-quality, really well-prepared data. That old saying, garbage in, garbage out, it's the absolute law of the land here. And here's the biggest challenge you're going to run into. An AI model has a limited memory. We call it a context window. You can't just throw a 1,000-page PDF at it and expect it to give you a coherent answer. It just doesn't work that way. You have to break all that information down into small, digestible pieces first. And the way we do that is through chunking. You basically got two main approaches. You can do it intelligently, what we call context-aware chunking, which keeps the meaning of sentences and paragraphs intact, or you can just chop it up into fixed sizes, which is way faster. The right choice here? It really depends on what your application needs to do. And of course, you have to clean that data. It's just like prepping ingredients before you cook, right? You get rid of all the junk, the ads, the footers, you fix spelling mistakes, you get everything ready for your application. We're really focusing on a pattern called Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG. All that means is the AI retrieves relevant facts from your documents before it generates an answer. And that makes this cleaning step absolutely critical. All right, our blueprint is designed and our foundation is laid. So now we get to move into the assembly phase. This is where we start taking all those pieces we've prepared and actually putting them together into a working application. Now, the great news is you do not have to build this from scratch. Tools like LangChain are basically the essential glue for Gen AI apps. They give you the framework to manage all the complicated interactions between your prompts, your models, and your data, and they make the whole process so much more manageable. And even here, during assembly, we are still refining our prompts. This is a crucial point. It's not a one-and-done step. As you build, you are constantly testing and tweaking your instructions to cut down on errors like hallucinations and just generally improve the quality of what the AI gives you. And critically, we build in safety. For a production app, guardrails are completely non-negotiable. This could be as simple as telling the model what not to talk about, or it could be more advanced, like using specialized models to filter out harmful content, or using masking techniques to protect private user data. So the application is built, it's been tested, now it is time for the launch. This is the moment we make our system available to actual users, and there are a few different ways we can go live.
The deployment method you choose really depends on the specific need. For huge, non-urgent jobs, you'd use batch processing. For something like a customer-facing chatbot, you absolutely need real-time serving for those instant responses. And for some apps, the model can even run right there on a user's own device. Tools like MLflow are designed to make this whole process way simpler. Its Python component, for instance, acts kind of like a universal adapter. It can package all these different kinds of models into a standard format, a simple Python function, which makes deploying them so much less of a headache.
Okay, once it's live, the listening begins. And I mean that. Every single request a user makes and every single response the model gives back gets logged to something we call an inference table. This table becomes our single source of truth for understanding exactly how our model is performing out there in the wild. Which brings us to our final and maybe the most important phase of all, being the guardian. See, launching your app isn't the end of the road. It's really the beginning of a long-term commitment to maintaining and protecting that live system. I mean, just look at this. A live AI system is a really complex machine with a ton of moving parts. Every arrow you see here represents a handoff from one component to another, and each one of those handoffs is a potential point of failure or risk that you need to be actively managing and monitoring. So how do we actually know if it's working well? We measure it. We ask really specific questions. Things like precision, is the information we're retrieving even relevant, and faithfulness, is the model just making stuff up, or is it sticking to the facts? These scores give us an objective look at the health of our application. And here's that whole monitoring pipeline in action. You can see how the process flows from left to right. It starts with the raw data, it moves through that inference table we just talked about, and it ends up as these processed metrics tables in a central data catalog. It's this continuous flow that gives us a real-time pulse on the system's performance. And we can automate this monitoring in a few different ways. We can track performance over time to spot trends, we can dive deep into the logs of specific predictions, or we can just take a snapshot to check the overall health of our data. It's all about having the right tools to keep that system running nice and smooth. So, you've gone through the whole life cycle. Your AI is deployed, it's being monitored, it is performing beautifully. Is the job done? Well, you probably already know the answer. Of course not. Because as this whole life cycle shows, it's a continuous loop. The data you get from monitoring feeds right back into development, which leads to the next evaluation, the next improvement, and the next evolution of your application. The work of a guardian is never truly over.